Hey everyone, what's up? Today I'm going to talk about some key differences that PoE 2 is implementing versus PoE 1 and why I think that will make the game more accessible, especially for beginners. Skill gems. One system in PoE 1 that seems to trip up a lot of newer players is related to the skill gems. Finding the appropriate gear pieces with the correct number of sockets and colors has always been challenging to beginners. In PoE 2, gems will now be separate from gear and in their own gem UI, which contains 9 slots of gems. Skill gems now drop with a variable amount of sockets, with a minimum of 2, going all the way up to 5, which can be upgraded using different tiers of Jeweler's Orbs. Support gems are now socketed directly into skill gems, which also means that all skill gems can be 6 links. In PoE 1, adding 6 sockets to an item costs 350 jewelers at the workbench. For PoE Wiki, odds are slightly better just using Jeweler's Orbs individually, with the average being around 1 in 300-ish or so. The bigger component is when you go to 6-link those sockets. Adding 6 links costs 1500 fusings at the workbench. Also, per PoE Wiki, odds of getting a 6-link via just using fusing orbs, there's about a 95% chance that it's going to take between 836 and 1244 orbs. So odds are better than the 1500 that it's going to cost at the actual workbench, but still a considerable amount. And I believe asking a beginner to try to get that many Jeweler's Orbs and that many fusings to make one single 6-link is a pretty tough ask. Also in PoE 2, finding the gems you will need will be easier, as instead of specific gems dropping, you will now find uncut skill gems. With these uncut skill gems, you actually get to pick which skill you want the gem to turn into. Also, uncut skill gems will be higher level depending on your character level. So if you're halfway or 3/4 of the way through the campaign, they're going to be a higher level. They're not going to all be level 1. Auras and Spirit. Another challenge that newer PoE players encounter is the use of auras and the mana reservation requirements that come along with it. Sure, it's tempting to deplete your entire mana pool to stack a lot of powerful auras, and it's common for pretty much all in-game builds. The problem is, those in-game builds have solutions already built in to offset the potential mana issues, whereas a newer player probably will not have the knowledge to do so. In PoE 2, auras won't reserve mana now, and will instead have its own separate spirit resource. Spirit will also be used for various buffs, permanent minions, and new meta gems. This will make the lives of newer players much easier when it comes to deciding between having enough mana and using as many auras and buffs as possible. Respeccing. In PoE 1, the passive tree is the single most talked about and memed about system in the entire game due to its vast options and complexity. On top of that, fixing mistakes in the passive tree requires orbs of regret, or some refund points which you do get awarded via certain quests. While regrets are easy to find and stack once you're running maps, there certainly is an abundance of them that drop early in the campaign, and the refund points you receive from quests is a finite amount. Because of this, newer players are almost forced to follow a build guide during their first playthrough, or end up hitting an impassable wall during the campaign. If someone wanted to play the game organically during their first playthrough, which, who wouldn't, could end up getting stuck with a bad build and no orbs of regret. Then it becomes a question of rolling a new character or quitting the game altogether. As mentioned by Jonathan Rogers in a recent interview, respeccing in the passive tree will now only cost gold in PoE 2. The gold cost for respeccing will escalate in cost based on a character level, so it will be easier for lower and mid-level characters and much more difficult and expensive for level 90 plus characters. I personally think this change will encourage new players to try their first playthrough organically with no guide, but overall I think it will also just encourage players in general to play a wider range of builds, knowing that if it sucks, you can respec pretty easily, so it's not a waste of your time. Trading. Anyone who trades in PoE 1 using the trade website knows some of the annoyances and frustrations that come along with using it. There are price fixers that list items for way under a normal price, and if you try to buy it, this requires you to scroll down and sometimes bid on several until someone finally answers you. A second annoyance involves trade bots that are programmed to monitor prices for items and buy up anything that a novice trader might have listed for undervalue. I personally find this to be problematic for the overall health of the economy in the game. Per Jonathan Rogers in a recent interview, trading in PoE 2 will actually have an instant buyout option. On top of that, trading will have a gold cost, and since gold isn't tradable, it's going to require the individuals that are making trades to actually play the game to be able to make trades. On top of everything I just listed, here are some additional miscellaneous items that will increase accessibility to the game, and I think will also just add overall quality of life even for veteran players. These have either already been officially announced or discussed in recent interviews. The death penalty. Everybody that plays PoE 1 knows that anytime you die, you lose 10% of your current XP bar towards the next level. In PoE 2, dying during the campaign is actually not going to reduce experience. There will now be an NPC in town that will identify all items in your inventory.
Stay a while and listen.
Everyone knows how fun having scarce wisdom scrolls are at the very beginning of your Act 1 start for a new league or a new character in general. This is going to be a huge quality of life for everybody, I would say. Another big one is that they mentioned in a recent interview, ascendancy points will no longer be accessed via Labyrinth and will be accessed using several different objectives. And I mean, honestly, who doesn't just love running labs, right? Like me personally, I think that's the worst and most annoying thing in the game. And this was something I was ecstatic when I heard about. Another big one is WASD movement. Now this is, an actual true accessibility improvement. WASD movement has been common in other games for years, like MMOs, but isometric ARPGs have mostly always been point and click. So those of us that are in our 30s and going up are definitely going to appreciate that, and our wrists will as well. Improved unique items, like 95% plus of the unique items in PoE 1 are pretty bad. Jonathan Rogers said in a recent interview that the goal is for unique items in PoE 2 to overall be improved versus PoE 1. So while elaborating on crafting being very, very important, he didn't want that to be the only way to find in-game best in slot type of gear. So I'm interested to see how that is going to look. But, generally speaking, unique items in games are more beginner friendly since they just have specific affixes and it's not going to require a new player to hunt specific affixes on rare gear or try to learn to craft. And speaking of crafting, they haven't announced really anything specifically on what they have planned for crafting, but also in a recent interview, Jonathan Rogers alluded to the fact that they want to raise the floor of crafting, making it more accessible to beginners and more useful without having to sacrifice the super in-game crafting for mere items. So, what do you think? Do you like the changes being made for PoE 2 versus PoE 1? Do you think PoE 2 is going to be more accessible to a wider range of players compared to PoE 1? Let me know in the comments below. And please like and subscribe if you want to see more Path of Exile videos in the future.